16. As far as our members that are present, Brittany Webb,
Here.
Dr. David Smith,
Here.
Daryl Gaines,
Here.
and myself. Do certify that we do have a quorum. Mr. Fitch is absent this morning. He notified us in advance that he was not going to be present, but obviously we meet the quorum requirement, and so we can officially do business today. So our first item of agenda, on the agenda is our approval of minutes. Do I have a motion? Those minutes were sent to you in advance of this meeting, board members, and is there any deletions, corrections that you saw that we need to make on that?
None that I saw.
Do I have a motion to accept the minutes as written?
Motion.
Motion was made by Mr. Gaines. Do I have a second?
I second.
Brittany seconds that motion. Any other discussion before I call for a vote? Okay, all those in favor of accepting the minutes as written indicate it by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Minutes approved as written. Okay, I didn't see any other public comment. Is there anyone out in the audience that is a member of the general public, or are we basically just in the presence of staff today? Okay, none that being said, I think we do not need to address the public comment section, so therefore, we can move on to our staff reports if no one has an objection. Okay? So we've got staff reports. We'll start with as the agenda states, with the executive office report.
Good Monday morning, Mr. Chairman, members. My name is George Ferry. I'm the Director of the Compliance Division, and I'll be sitting in for Mr. Francis and giving the executive staff report this morning. So let's start with legislative updates. You may have heard that our elected officials will be coming back to town next month, January 10th, for the beginning of the 85th session. And some of the activities have already begun. We were involved in a sunset hearing last week that included, among other things, a health consolidation project proposal from the Sunset staff that would send us 10 additional programs, including 3 that are still at Department of State Health Services. That was just they were just taking testimony on Thursday and Friday. And the decision meeting on those proposals will be sometime in January. I don't remember the exact date, but we were there to testify. Mr. Francis made some comments and answered questions about the agency, and listened to comments from the other agencies that the Sunset staff proposes to consolidate with us over several years, actually. So we're staying tuned on that. A little more recent development, obviously from the last session, Senate Bill 202, we are busily implementing phase 1, of which this program is a part. We went live October 1st, and so far things seem to be going very well, and we have no reason to believe that they will not continue to do so. We're actually in the process of preparing for phase 2, and our folks from the health professions section here in the compliance division will be giving you an update on and the status of that project. So again, we're just busily getting ready for the next session. They started filing bills back in November and will continue doing so through the middle of March. Nothing really happens as far as hearings on bills until sometime into March, but we will still be listening in on what's happening in the session and tracking the bills that are being filed as they are filed. So that's it for the legislative update. Before I move on to personnel update, any questions?
No, I think the biggest thing is just if you guys could kind of communicate along with us if you see bills that come up that directly affect the workings of the athletic trainer in this field or our board, if you'll just kind of help us stay in the loop.
We will do that.
On those, just so that we're in the know.
And generally during the session, I know last session anyway, we posted on our website bills of interest to any of our licensees. So you'll see that on the website this time around, I assume. And there'll be a separate link, I would assume, for each program. You'll be able to find the bills that have been filed that apply to you and have some impact on your program. So
Perfect.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. We will do that. All right. Personnel update. So We're excited to announce that we have added 2 more individuals, or they will be added on December 15th, to our executive leadership team. We'll have a new deputy director. Mr. Francis, as you recall, was the deputy director, so he has filled his position, and we've also added a chief of staff for customer service and strategic communication. So for the deputy director, Ms. Carla James will be starting with us on December 15th. She's coming to us from the Comptroller's office, where she served as the appropriation control supervisor since 2012. She has extensive experience in state budget and accounting policies and procedures related to appropriations and accounting functions, something near and dear to our heart. We like our paychecks to clear here, so. She's also done other work for the Comptroller, was a Deputy Securities Commissioner, Director of Staff Services for the Texas State Securities Board, and at one point she was Executive Director for the Texas Incentive and Productivity Commission. We're excited to have her on board here. She received a BA in Government from the University of Texas at Austin as her background. And again, she will be in charge of operations and regulatory service. We're kind of splitting the responsibilities for the 2 deputies. The other individual is Nick Boenis, who will be our Chief of Staff for Customer Service, Strategic Communication, and Government Relations. Left that part out the first time. Mr. Boenis comes to us from the University of Texas, where he served as the Senior Associate Athletics Director. Primarily, though, he was the chief spokesperson for the department in sports programs, and he managed and supervised the department media relations, marketing, game day productions, web, photography, video, and graphic design staffs. He was the primary department contact for the UT Austin state and federal government affairs staff on issues affecting Texas and the Big 12. Prior to that, he has worked as a director of media relations for public strategies and has extensive experience as a communications director for Texas government leadership and political campaigns. So we're really excited to have 2 very experienced, very qualified individuals as part of the executive leadership team. We look forward to working with them and having them part of the TDLR family. So that's the personnel update we have for you today. You have any questions?
Or do you? Okay, I don't think so. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we'll move forward on into our Compliance Division report.
Good morning, members. I'm Stephen Mills, Health Professions Section Manager in the Compliance Division. We provided you a written report. I don't have a lot to flesh out on that. As you know, the program transferred to TDLR on October 1st, along with 6 other programs. We hired Stuart Myrick on October 17th, and we're very happy about that. We did outreach phone calls too since the time of transition with Spanky Stevens with the Texas State Athletic Trainers Association, and also with Mr. Weir of your board. We asked for feedback on how everyone's perceptions for how the transition went, and we did receive generally positive feedback during those calls. As George mentioned, we are beginning to move into phase 2 program transitions, which would bring 6 more programs here from the Department of State Health Services next November 1st, 2017. And so we've been involved in planning and working closely with General Counsel and other areas of the agency. And there is a summit scheduled for stakeholders on January 5th. So that's our first big event. These programs, I put them on the report, but they include massage therapists, sanitarians, code enforcement officers, offender education providers, mold assessors and remediators, and laser hair removal facilities and professionals.
Okay.
Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Members? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on into the Education Examination Division report. I know you guys have had some activity since we've last met, so.
Good morning, Chairman and Advisory Board members. My name is Rebecca Armas, and I'm with Education and Examination Division. I just wanted to first say thank you very much to everyone that participated in the December 4th administration of the practical exam. It was a very successful run. We had about 51 candidates test throughout the state, and they should be receiving their results within, I'd say, the next couple of weeks. We also want to thank everybody on the internal end, our IT group, and as well as our licensing team to make sure that we had the candidates and everything good to go for this first administration. We also wanted to give you an update on the CE audits. They just went out, and we should be, your group will start receiving notices. They get a detailed notice to see what exactly is required of them. They should be receiving those, I'd say, in the mail anytime now. And that's about all we have on our end.
What is your targeted date that you will have, actually exam results for that practical to those candidates?
They were notified via the candidate information bulletin that it's 14 business days from December 4th.
Okay.
So,
Good. That's always a critical time, because obviously you're finishing up the semester, and many of these candidates will be trying to seek jobs. And I know that's when we have traditionally in the past started getting phone calls
Yes.
as to trying to ascertain that they did pass and are able to go to work for, in some cases, in the spring and spring semesters. And so the sooner that we can get that returned back to them, obviously the better. So.
right, and we understood that, and I think when we were processing, how we were going to get these exam results back to the candidates, our goal was the minimal time. We didn't want them to have to wait all through Christmas break to
Right.
figure out whether they've passed or not. So we're hoping that they'll know here pretty quick
Very good.
whether or not they've passed.
Very good. Okay, any other comments, questions from members?
Some positive feedback that I have been hearing is that they absolutely love to be able to know if they passed right when they finish their written. So they are really excited about that update, and so that's good.
Okay, anything else? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Enforcement Division.
It was a long walk over here. Well, good morning and Merry Christmas.
Christmas to you as well.
My name is Ken Sharp. I'm with the Enforcement Division here, and some of you know me. You've worked with me a little bit on one of the work groups. Anyway, there's not a whole lot I can give you because there hasn't been a whole lot of activity in enforcement. I will tell you that briefly, we had 107 open cases that transferred over from Department of State Health Services, and of those 6 were athletic trainer cases. We're examining all of those very thoroughly, of course, to determine the appropriate disposition, as we do with all our cases. One of those has already been closed because there was insufficient evidence on that. It was an anonymous complaint, and we needed more stuff and couldn't get it. One of those, we drafted a notice of alleged violation on that. There was a conviction for inappropriate conduct between an educator and a student, and so we're working on that one. But other than that, the rest of them are pending. They're in investigation right now, and we're going to get to find out, like I said, what the appropriate disposition is on those. I want to also mention that in the Enforcement Division, I think at all of TDLR, we do have, and we've developed a system to safeguard anything that has medical records in it, to include the athletic trainer program cases. And so all of those files they're kept in locked filing cabinets. They're not going to be released accidentally. At least we're trying our best not to let that happen. Now, I don't have anything else, but I'll certainly try to either answer any questions you have or create more confusion.
We aim to please here at TDLR. so-
Absolutely, I can tell. I can tell. Mr. Francis has set a high standard.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. And we uphold it every chance we get.
Any questions or comments for enforcement?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Moving right along, will you move to the Licensing Division?
Good morning, Leonard Rivas with the Licensing Division. So what I have to report is for the month of October, We had 23 new licenses issued, 182 renewals processed, and the current population is 3,598. I'll take any questions. Short and sweet.
Are you sure every one of those are, that's correct? It's
So
hard
that
to-
means that there's basically 3,600 licensed athletic trainers in the state of
Correct.
Texas? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other
Okay.
questions?
Okay,
All right,
thank you
thank
very
you.
much.
Could you shorten your report a little bit? more?
I will next time.
We could use some brevity. Okay, we'll move into discussion and possible action for our penalty matrix for our athletic trainers program.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and board members. I'm Christina Kaiser. I'm the Director of the Enforcement Division here at TDLR. At Agenda Item F, you have in front of you a draft of a penalty matrix for the Athletic Trainers Program. A little bit of background just to kind of fill you in. The penalty matrix is used by the agency to put the industry and just the public on notice of the penalties and sanctions that a person is subject to if they violate the athletic trainer statute or rules. It is also used within our house, within the Enforcement Division, as guidance for the prosecuting attorneys. When the lawyers are preparing to charge someone with a violation in a formal sense by issuing a notice of alleged violation, the penalty matrix sets a range within which the penalty or license sanction has to fall for each particular violation. Generally, the prosecutors in the Enforcement Division are bound by the ranges that are within the penalty matrix. They can go outside of it by getting specific permission from me on a case-by-case basis. A few things that the penalty matrix is not, some things that are often asked, questions when people are trying to understand. The penalty matrix does not create law. The law that applies to your industry is the athletic trainer statute and the rules. The matrix, in creating the matrix, we simply lift violations out of the statute and the rules and plop them into this format for classification purposes. It also does not represent every possible outcome that is available in an enforcement case. The penalty matrix only comes into play if we're going to be pursuing formal enforcement action against someone for penalties or license sanctions. There are a whole range of other informal resolutions that are possible and that are indeed used in the majority of cases by the Enforcement Division prosecutors. Those include warnings, resolutions because the respondent has made the complainant whole, findings of insufficient evidence such as Mr. Sharp described a moment ago. So I don't want you to feel that because something is in the matrix, it's like an automatic requirement that we must pursue a penalty or a sanction against somebody. In some of our earlier discussions, y'all probably heard me talk about prosecutorial discretion. That is not only something the prosecutors are allowed to exercise, that's something they're kind of expected to exercise here because we believe in pursuing the violations that need to be pursued and leaving the rest of them alone. One final thing that I'll mention about the matrix, it is not binding on our commission. When a case goes to formal hearing through the State Office of Administrative Hearings and then it is finally heard for final decision in front of our commission, they are not bound by the penalty matrix. They are only bound by the limits that are within the law. However, as a practical matter, the commission almost always does stay within the ranges in the penalty matrix. They try to follow that because this is what the industry has been put on notice of. Ultimately, at the end of this discussion today, what I'm going to ask of you is that you vote to recommend this matrix for the commission's approval. And if you make that vote, then at the next meeting of our commission, we would have this agenda on for their this matrix on for their consideration, and hopefully they will approve it. We worked with the enforcement work group of this advisory board in order to create this document. The members of that enforcement work group are Mr. Daryl Gaines and Dr. David Schmidt. I want to thank you, gentlemen, for your assistance in this process. Let me tell you a little bit about how we created the matrix. In the beginning, one of our staff attorney, in this case it was Mr. Sharp, scoured through the statute and rules and basically lifted out, made a list, if you will, of every possible violation that could be that could result in enforcement action. Ken created a first draft of this document. He organized the violations into the classes by making his best guess of how serious each violation was, starting with the least serious in Class A and then moving up through the documents so that you'll see Class D, those are the most serious violations. When we're creating a draft of the document, there are certain violations that are common in all licensing schemes, and we'll try to keep those in the same place across all penalty matrices just for consistency. An example of that, if you look at Class A, failure to notify the department of a change in address, you're almost always going to see that in Class A in every matrix. Similarly, in Class D, obtaining a license by fraud, that's always going to be in the highest class because we feel like that's a drop-dead type of violation. After we created this draft, then we met with the enforcement work group to review the document, and the most critical thing that the enforcement work group did for us was help us figure out the seriousness of the violations. Through our discussion, we moved some violations around either to higher or lower classes just to get the ordering right. So as you move up from A to B to C to D, you went from the least serious to the most serious. As I said, we made a guess at that, but we don't know, and that's one of the most critical things that you folks are here for, is to help us understand the industry. After we got the ordering right, based on the seriousness, then the next discussion was simply what penalties and what license sanctions should apply to each class of violation. The work group met on October 10th and November 14th, and then we exchanged emails after each meeting to finalize the document. I'd like to draw your attention to a few elements in the formatting or the content of the document. As you see each violation described, for example, in Class A, the one I talked about earlier, licensee failed to notify department of change in name or address within 30 days of change. Clearly, that's a paraphrasing of the language that's in the rule in this instance. And that's what we do throughout the document. We paraphrase. We try to use as few words as possible, short statements that are just enough to identify the action that we're talking about. This is not the law. And so it does not have to be precise, and it does not have to contain every nuance that's present in the statute or the rules. It's just enough to point the lawyer where they need to go. And then, of course, you have the specific citation to the statute or the rule next to it, so you know where to find the full law. You'll see that within each class of violation, we have subject matter headings, for example, administrative violations, license violations, unprofessional or unethical conduct. These are there just to make it easier for the user of this document, whether it's one of our lawyers or an athletic trainer out there in the world, to find the violations within the document. With those subject matter headings, we try to use common terminology as much as we can across different penalty matrices, again, just for the sake of consistency and the speed of the prosecutors in using these documents. But if any of these don't make sense, we certainly want to hear it from you, because we're definitely not married to any of these words. Something that's unique to this penalty matrix, and this is going to be unique to all of the health-related programs as we develop their penalty matrices. We've set out categories with the words standard of care. We set these categories out separately. These are the violations that we have identified for which we are always going to need the opinion of an expert witness during the investigation of that case. And so we decided to use those standard of care words as just a kind of a quick pointer. A standard of care case is going to go beyond a simple determination of what the facts are, and it's going to require an interpretation of whether those facts reflect a violation of some standard that applies within your profession. For an example, if you look in Class C, you'll see there's a violation of providing healthcare services outside the scope of practice of an athletic trainer. Outside the scope of practice is clearly a standard that you have to measure the facts against, and that's where the opinion of the expert will come in. We may need the expert opinion on other violations in this matrix as well. For example, some of those that are characterized as unprofessional or unethical conduct. And we will definitely seek that when we need it. But we've kind of used the standard of care as we're always going to need the expert on these. Another thing that is unique to this matrix, and we're going to be recommending this for all of the matrices in the new health-related programs, is that when you look at each class, you'll see that there's a single range of penalty and license sanction available for each class of violation. So for example, under Class A, you'll see there's a penalty range of $100 to $200. This is different from the penalty matrices in TDLR's existing programs. For example, I wanted to just show you for comparison, Chris has the penalty matrix for the air conditioning and refrigeration contractors program up here, and you'll see that on each class there's a first violation range, a second violation range, and a third violation range. We are recommending the more simple approach for the health-related programs for a couple of reasons. For athletic trainers, this especially makes sense because the maximum penalty per violation in your statute is limited to $500. By comparison, in most of our other programs, the maximum penalty is $5,000. So when you only have a range of 1 to 500, you don't have a lot of wiggle room to play with, so you can't slice it up too much. Another reason is that in the athletic trainers program, we don't really expect very many enforcement cases to happen overall, based on the feedback we've gotten and the historical data that we've gotten from DSHS and what the enforcement work group members were able to tell us. So we doubt that if we carved out a second and third violation, we doubt that they would be used very much. And also in this program, the discussions with the work group members identified quite a few violations that are sort of one and done type violations. You commit this once and you should lose your license. So if you compared this matrix with some of the other ones for our programs, you'll see that that top class, Class D, has more violations in it than what you usually see. And that's just a representation of the importance of this profession and the context in which you work. In Class C, similarly, we have quite a few violations that have the potential to be one and done. So you'll see when we start looking at the penalty amounts that Class C goes all the way up to revocation of the license if the circumstances warrant. And we had quite a few discussions about, do you always want this to end up in a revocation? If so, then we put it in Class D. If you think the circumstances may make it either less serious or more serious, but you want the possibility of a revocation, then we put those in Class C. Does that kind of make sense? When we use a single range of penalty amounts like this, by just having one range for the whole class, the range is a little broader, although not really here because of the dollar limit in your statute, but generally it's going to provide more discretion for the attorney to take into account the circumstances of each particular case. You know, as we talked about in Class C, some of the violations have the potential to vary widely in terms of the harm they've created. An example of that, violating the law relating to confidential medical records. We talked about that one in the work group meetings about, you know, the harm could be this big or it could be this big, you know, depending on the nature of the act. One final reason that I would suggest the single range of penalties is a good idea is because it is consistent with a movement that we're making in the enforcement division that's reflected in our strategic plan. Specifically, you know, in our last strategic plan, the most recent one, we set out agency goals. And one of those agency goals was to target enforcement resources on violations that represent consumer harms or threats to public safety. And within that goal, there are action steps. And one of those, Chris put it up on the board. One of the action steps, number 3, and the action steps are simply things that we intend to do to achieve that goal. Action step number 3 is to, now I'm having a hard time reading this. Please, yes. Streamline procedural steps to ensure prompt investigation and resolution of complaints. So the point is, keep the matrix as simple as possible so that it doesn't become something that we have to argue about and stumble over during a contested case. In some of our other programs, tow trucks, for example, it jumps to mind, the breakdown of first, second, and third range has become a point of contention in contested cases that the lawyers have had to spend time on, the judges have had to spend time on, and then our commission has had to spend time on. And that's not what this document should be. It should not be a bone of contention. It should just be a guidance document. And so we want to try to keep it as simple as possible, and probably we'll try to move some of the other matrices in that direction as well, assuming our commission agrees with the idea. So That was a whole lot of explanation. I wanted to kind of put the non-work group members in the frame of where we are with this document. Can I answer any questions about any of that?
I have one, and maybe I'm just missing it here, but where would failure to meet continuing education requirements, where would that fall under, which class? And what is the penalty for that? And maybe it's just not, the terminology is just not there for me to pull it out.
Yeah, it may not be in the statute or the rules in a way that we could, typically that would probably be an A or B.
I don't know that we put it in there. I think we kind of left that back to, you know, either you did everything to renew your license or you didn't. And if you didn't, then you didn't carry your license. So not necessarily a violation.
Well, see, what all I'm saying is that could be, that might not get pulled out. Now, I mean, maybe that's failure to, or that's fraud, maybe it's a fraud issue, because you're signing that you have met requirements upon your renewal, but it might not get pulled out if you're not audited, but then it comes out at a later point in time. So that's my question.
Well, it might be under the unprofessional too, that last one that they have up there, violates any provisions of athletic training status or rules.
Okay.
Could that fit into that?
In some of our other matrices, we have specifically a violation set out for if the statute or the rule is written in such a way to identify failure to satisfy continuing education as a violation. Some of the statutes and rules are not written that way. We can look through them and answer that question, but if we haven't identified it in here, then that means that when Ken went through the statute and rules, it was not written in a way that it would be an enforceable thing by enforcement.
Can I add something, Linda Thomas is the general counsel. Should someone miss
You're gonna
one-
have to go to the mic, or they're not gonna be able to
I'm
record
gonna
you.
this mic.
Yes.
I'm Brad Bowman, general counsel.
For today.
I appreciate what you said, and Mr. Ganis, thank you for your comment. Ultimately, under the standards of conduct, if you look under, and I'm sorry, I just pulled one page, this would be subsection B of the first rules. If someone misrepresented their credentials, potentially that would be something that enforcement action could be taken on,
Okay.
so.
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we had,
I just think that's kind of the way I looked at it.
okay.
You know, I mean.
Well, I know as a board, we've spent a lot of time discussing continuing education and the need for it. And I just want to make sure and I think that, you know, not disagreeing with that at all. I just want to make sure we had an avenue.
Oh, absolutely.
That-
I would
that's-
think where it says provided false information to the department on an application.
That's what, well,
Because that's what a renewal is, application for renewal,
no,
right?
that's true. Okay, yeah,
Right.
I can go with that.
Yes, if someone actively falsified information, then it would definitely fall in the Class D language. If someone merely didn't complete their CE, then I'm not sure that that alone is going to be enough to support an enforcement action, because that is a requirement for renewal of the license, but it's not necessarily a thing that rises to the level of enforcement
Right,
action
I'm
in the
just,
absence
I'm
of
just
fraud.
making sure that we had, if enforcement goes through and, or continuing ed goes through and pulls an audit on someone and they haven't met their qualifications, you know, where do you go to, what page that
Yeah.
spells out that this
Right.
is the punishment for not meeting
Yeah.
that requirement?
And I'm glad you framed the question that way. We always have the authority to deny or revoke someone's license if they don't meet all the requirements, either for obtaining the license initially or for renewing the license.
Okay.
But all of those scenarios don't have to be reflected in the penalty matrix. That's kind of a separate body of work. Those would be referred to enforcement on a one-off basis, either by the education division or the licensing division in some circumstances. And the sort of the posture of that case would be different. We wouldn't be seeking penalties probably against that person. We would just be trying to take away a license that they're not qualified to hold. So this matrix represents the more formal sort of disciplinary enforcement action. It doesn't represent the you're not qualified to hold this license type of action. Does that help?
Yeah, I guess the thing that concerned me is that, you know, I guess you could, a person could kind of, I would like, I guess, roll the dice in a situation and basically, I guess if you're telling me there, if you roll the dice and you came up, you know, on the short end, that's, we're just gonna go after your license and strip you of your license. And, you know, that's a pretty drastic measure to go through to do that. And that's where, you know, on the other hand, if there's not some form of penalty there, you just said, okay, well, if I don't get it, you know, then they've got to find it out. And if they find it out, I'm either going to have the option to go get current, you know,
Right.
with no penalty, or I have you know, or I'm going to have my license revoked. And is that what we're saying? Is that what we're wanting, I guess?
No, it's or. It doesn't say we discussed this quite a bit. So revocation is a possibility.
Okay.
But not, so if you have a Class D offense, so let's
Okay.
say you provided false information. So let's say, if I'm correct, y'all look at it and go, this guy said he did this CEU, but he didn't. Or he said, I had 8 hours, but I only had 6. It's not like so y'all have the opportunity to fine him, but not necessarily revoke his license.
Right,
Okay.
yes, absolutely. And in
Okay.
a situation like that, what we do at the end of the day is largely going to depend on how that person responds once we call him on the carpet.
Okay.
You know, so I would expect that a lot of those kind of situations will probably get resolved within the education section and not even have to be referred to enforcement. You know, if someone responds very promptly, because education will communicate with the person once and try to resolve it with them once before they refer that to enforcement. That's kind of a standard deal for these kind of
Okay.
things.
I have a
So-
question. Does TDLR audit athletic trainers' applications? In other words, do you pull out, say, 10 a year and go, okay, prove it?
The enforcement division does not do that. Now, I can ask if the licensing or the education section does anything of that nature, and they could come up here and answer.
Well, Dr. Smith, I guess my thought or answer is depending on the method at which they're coming in, much of that is proven in the application, because if you're coming in under an internship or an apprentice route, your hours have been signed off on by the person who has supervised you. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not you just
I really meant
stated.
renewals.
Okay, on
So-
renewals.
Right.
So
There is a percentage of those, correct? There's a 10%,
Does education and enforcement, education examination with Ray
you
or
want to, I guess, address that?
Becca or someone?
I'm going
Thank
off of
you.
some old numbers of the previous agency as the audit rate. Ray, you thought you weren't going to have to come up here. You see, we got you up here one way or the other.
I figured we'd get you up there.
Ray Pizarro, Director for Education Exam. As Rebecca said earlier, we began the audit processing for all of the DSHS programs that we have right now. It was we sort of launched it at a slow rate to try to make sure this thing is running the way we want it to run. So, as you know, right now it's a contingency of renewal, the actual audit process. Hopefully in the future, what we want to do is unmarry that. So people will be able to renew their license, and we will come on the tail end to see if they actually finish their continuing education. Right now, they can't renew unless they finish the CE or unless they've done it or we prove that they've done it. But hopefully we can say, you're going to go ahead, everybody renews, we'll come back on the tail end, check to see if you've done the CE. If you have not, then, we'll get them on the penalty matrix of what they have not done. It could be maybe fraud or whatever we change it to or enhance that type of thing. But the audits going on, we are looking at those, and hopefully this first time around when it comes in, we'll see what little things we need to tweak or change, because there's a letter that's going out to them. We want to make sure what we're sending to them is absolutely clear of what they need to give to us. And we've already made some initial changes on the letter after we draft it and say, oh, we missed that, let's change this. So we're going to continue to look at these things and see how we can improve and be more efficient.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question on the renewal. Are we sending out postcards or emails to them saying, you know, within 30 days you need to renew your license?
There is a postcard that's being sent out.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Other
I just wanted to
questions?
say that through the work group, and I won't speak for Dr. Schmidt, but for myself, that I thought it went very smooth. I thought you guys did an excellent job of guiding us to what we needed to tell you, and not that you were scoping it out to, we want you to say this, and no, but allowing us to talk and for us to work together to put this forward for approval, et cetera. I thought it went real smooth, and I appreciate y'all's help.
Thank you.
Well, on behalf of the board, I certainly want to thank Daryl and Dr. Smith for your time and efforts on this. I mean, you can tell this was not hastily done and very, very well organized, very well presented. Thank you for that.
Just one thing I might be missing, but under Class D in this license in violation in the second table, are we missing trainer, perform duties of an
Yes.
athletic trainer? Okay.
Yes, we are. Thank you.
You're welcome. I thought maybe I was missing
Great
something.
job.
Sometimes in my haste to use the fewest words possible, I take away some words
Oh,
that are actually
absolutely.
needed.
I understand.
Um,
Believe you me, I understand. I do it on a daily basis.
So at this point, we can walk through the violations in each class and kind of talk about them, or I can open the floor simply to answer your questions about any violations that you have. I'll take my guidance from you on how we want to do that.
Board, you've obviously had an opportunity to review these, but prior to today, I know Dr. Smith and Daryl have reviewed it extensively. I spent a lot of time with it the other day myself. So, Brittany, do you have a need that we need to go item by item?
No, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think, I feel confident that we're at the point of taking a motion to recommend adoption on that. So with that edit being noted, in that just wordsmithing there, with that being said, do I have a motion to recommend adoption?
Yes, a motion.
Brittany has made that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Dr. Gaines, Mr. Gaines, Daryl Gaines, seconds that. I would
We
say.
said it at the same time, so it became.
Okay, well, okay. So anyway, any other discussion before I call for the vote? All those in favor of recommending this penalty matrix for adoption with the edits noted that were just made, all those in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Okay, that passed 4-0, and so it can go on to the commission for their adoption if they see fit.
Thank you for your help.
Thank you very much. Okay, board, do you have any items or other business that we need to kind of generally discuss here? I have to caution that's, agenda items, but is there any other things that we need to place to be considered at our next board meeting that you know of? So that we can have that on the record to be placed on the agenda. Okay, kind of leave to staff to guide a guide. Do we need to discuss a future meeting date or time at this point in time, or do we want to kind of keep that open?
Well, might be at this point, since we don't have any specific agenda items.
Right.
You go ahead and leave it open. It almost certainly will not be during the session.
Okay.
If something, unless something just really, important comes up. But
Okay.
we've been setting board meetings at this point, like in June or something like that. So likely, we will do the same exercise. We'll contact you, and when we get near to where we need to come back and talk about something.
Okay.
And check everyone's availability and set a date in the
Okay.
future. So.
Just a couple of dates that I will just kind of point out to staff on. I know the TSATA, the stakeholders group, will be having their midwinter meeting in January 22nd. That's a Sunday, and they will be meeting at the Hilton Airport. And so if any of you all would like to attend that, you certainly can. If you've got an agenda item, the agenda's pretty normally tightly pressed. So, but I'm planning at this point in time on attending that, just so that you have knowledge of that, and if any staff that would like to, so.
And please keep us informed.
Okay, yeah, if there's something that comes from that.
And I'm sorry, what city will the meeting be in?
Austin
Austin,
Hilton.
okay, just to make sure. Absolutely,
The
yes, sir.
airport.
We would like to participate to the extent that you need us to, so.
Okay. And then secondly, if you could kind of keep this on your calendar as well, SWATA, the Southwest Athletic Trainer Association, which is a larger, you guys have attended last year and presented a couple of sessions. If there is a specific item, I know last year it was great. We actually organized and set up a couple of informational sessions. I don't know that's going to be needed, but if there's something that, comes out of the legislative effort that we need to have a pull-out side. Other than that, I typically have had a quick, just brief update in their general forum, which I have presented, but would love to have some of you all in proximity. It's good. Would love to have you all in the booth and in the exhibitors booth. They're able to answer questions and just have a visual presence at that meeting like you guys did last year, and you shared that with DSHS last year. So I request that you guys make plans. That's July 20th through 22nd. That's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday meeting in San Marcos. And I can, or, yeah.
The Embassy Suites in San Marcos? Uh-huh.
So coming close to Austin.
Absolutely, yes.
So, anyway, but I just would like to, let you know of that so you can make plans. And if you have questions on how to get a booth reserved and that sort of thing, I know Stuart can kind of direct you with that a little bit and give you that information so that we get you on board and for that. So that's a couple of items, dates that I would like you guys just to have on your calendars. Board, anything else? So obviously we'll leave the next board meeting kind of open right now of a possibility of June if needed, and we can move from there. Any other comments, questions, concerns before we adjourn?
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, just kind of one question, maybe for planning purposes. Would you have any interest in scheduling your next advisory board meeting in close proximity to the SWATA meeting? Would that be useful? Not necessarily a big deal either way?
Certainly, I think, obviously Dr. Smith is not a person that normally attends that meeting, but if we can work it within his schedule, I think, normally probably Brittany will be, and she's probably hosting, almost. But anyway, and Daryl as well, and I, planning on being there as well. So if, that may very likely work if
Okay.
your staff can get there. And I understand you're bringing a lot of people, so, and sometimes it's, of the masses, it's easier to bring 4 to one location than it is to bring, 15 or 20 to that location, so.
Let me ask you this, any particular, is Monday a really good day for you all, or doesn't really matter, or?
Mondays traditionally, when we've come to Austin, has been a pretty good day.
Okay.
For instance, I wouldn't want to do a Monday meeting if we did it in conjunction with SWATA. I think later in the week, possibly a Wednesday meeting or something like that would be more applicable as to people, because we don't need to get to that meeting 3 days early
Okay.
and incur that kind of cost.
Well, we could tentatively say July 19th, which is a Wednesday, the week of the SWATA thing, if you want to just kind of do that as a tentative date,
Okay, Dr. Smith, do you think that could work for you?
I know the Sports Medicine Society meeting, I think, starts the Thursday in Toronto, but I think Wednesday would work.
Okay. So
Okay.
I'm certainly good with that, and I think that would, that would be a good thing, because any members or stakeholders that would like to be guests and attend this meeting as well.
So it'd be
and
in
speak to
San
him.
Marcos?
Yes. Is that okay?
In San
Could we do that and do it in
Marcos?
San
Sure.
Marcos? Can you guys get there?
Or do we need to
Or
bring
would
it
this need to be here?
Well, it would have to be here, because we want to be able to record and
To record it.
broadcast the
Okay.
festivities. So, yes, sir.
Yeah, I think we could just kind of keep it, make sure that there's not other meetings that,
Sure.
that we need to get pulled to that
Okay.
are there, so that's, and so I think that's a tentative.
Do you still want to do it at 9 o'clock?
That's y'all's choice, yeah. I was just going to ask you that.
So,
Just depends on Brittany's ability to get in town.
She's got a long way to drive.
I'm sorry I can't deal with traffic, Red. I'm sorry.
Okay.
9 o'clock in the morning is not set in stone. If y'all want to do it in the afternoon instead, or do it at 1.
no, I
No,
think
that
that's,
is-
that would probably work, and then most anybody, then we could leave from there if we needed to, and
Okay.
could go on to that other meeting.
Okay, so 9 o'clock is still your preference in the morning.
So SWATA starts on Wednesday?
It'll start on Thursday.
I'll parachute in next time, Dad, okay?
Okay, any other thoughts, comments, concerns before we adjourn? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Motion made by Darrell, second.
Second.
Dr. Schmidt seconds. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. All
Aye.
those opposed? And we are adjourned at 9:54.